Beavemanites and Docutrons, assemble!
Okay, so back in the day, I was way above the wave, man. I traded in the girls for the video games. I played so much.
This episode sponsored by Squarespace.
Squarespace for all of your website needs. No, actually, we're not.
We're not
paid.
sponsored.
We don't get paid by Squarespace. This is Beaveman on the dock, and I am the Beaveman. With me today is Ron's.
Now it's Ron's, not Ronzi, not the Ronulator.
Oh, if you're a fan of Ron, you're a Ronulan. If you're a fan of Beaveman, you're a Beavemanite. And if you're a fan of Doc, what the fuck is wrong with you? Just kidding! Doc, if you're listening, we miss you. Come back and hang out with us and tell us about all of your wonderful adventures in college. But as a substitute, of course, I have my good friend, or nemesis, Paper Doc. Paper Doc, please say something to the listening audience. Yeah, that's me. As you well know, Paper Doc, hung like a horse, if you will. You see the size of my tongue depressor?
Yeah, it's a tongue depressor.
It is a tongue depressor. I like to think of it as an external flat phallus, if you will, but it's pretty big. I mean, I've been around, and I've seen other tongue depressors, and they're not nearly as girthy as this one.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, wow, Doc. You are sometimes a very sick individual,
But aren't we all at some point in our lives?
I feel like I'm a sick individual pretty much most of the time in my life. And which kind of brings me up to a funny point. I don't think that, I wouldn't say that my brand of humor is toilet humor per se.
Okay.
But I don't think it's clean humor. I mean, clean humor is cute. Do you like Jim Gaffigan?
Yeah, I do, actually.
I enjoy Jim Gaffigan. I think he's really funny, but he's pretty clean. He doesn't really say anything that, for example, I will let my daughter, as everyone probably knows her from Beaveman and the Daughter podcast, I will let her watch a stand-up of Jim Gaffigan because he's not that bad at it. He's not bad at all. He's a funny guy.
I agree.
I, however, would not let her listen to one of Eddie Murphy's old stand-ups.
No. Eddie Murphy.
Or even Robin Williams. No.
Yeah, those are very, what they call blue. Another clean comedian is Gabriel Iglesias. Right? When you see, he can.
Gabriel Iglesias? Oh, I'm thinking of, I'm like, you talking about Julio Iglesias' kid?
Yeah, you'll know.
No, that's Enrique Iglesias, right?
Enrique, yeah.
Okay.
Enrique.
Are they related?
No.
I guess Church is a common last name.
But
you know what that's Iglesias means, right?
No, I didn't.
It means church.
Wow.
I think. I mean, I am Hispanic American. I should probably know what it
means. I
want
to point something out here on that note. Not many people know this, so I'll reveal a fact about myself. Both my godparents are full-blooded Latinos.
Well, that doesn't usually make you blood related unless they're blood relatives who are your godparents.
Oh, I see how that works. I'm
not
not accepted into the culture.
Are they blood related?
Godparents are not blood related.
Well, I mean, they can be. I'm just saying, are yours? I don't know if you knew this or not, but most of the time they're not. They're like family friends or whatever.
Well, they're friends of my family. I mean,
for example, my brother, little brother, his godfather is my older brother.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that. That sounds kind of like a creepy thing, but okay.
Well, I mean, it's not like creepy. I think that my parents were just thinking in their head that should both of them die tragically, my older brother is 12 years older than my little brother. Because you don't go to your godparents anyway. It's a gesture. It's not like
I agree.
It's a gesture. You're not going to go to your godparents, but that's kind of the thing. Like, well, who would I want to raise my child in the future? And that's who they pick. Mm-hmm. So they picked my older brother.
I understand that.
And I don't remember who his godmother is. I think it's my mom's friend. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never met. I don't know my godparents. I never met them. So
my godparents were my mom's friend and her son. So
they're not husband and wife. They're just two people.
Yeah.
They're mother and son.
Yeah.
Okay, so now in the eyes of God, though, they're married because they're godparents. So that's kind of gross.
Wow, you took a really warped turn on that.
I was just thinking.
Yeah. And this is all started because some people might find my humor offensive.
Or disgusting. But the reason why, continue with your thought, and then I'll tell you why I said that. Go ahead. Continue with your thought that you, by virtue of godparents, now think that you're Hispanic. Please go ahead.
No, I didn't say I was Hispanic, but I just wanted to point that out because I made a comment the last podcast about the wall, and you said you were Hispanic and you found that offensive, and I thought, man, did I step over that line? No. Because I respect you, I really do. Go figure. So, with that said, I started to think about how the culture around me has got this hysteria against aliens. We're not talking Area 51 aliens, which would be cool.
That would be cool. Or would it? Mm-hmm. You know the whole Stephen Hawking theory on aliens, as I understand it.
What's that?
He thinks that we shouldn't be trying to contact aliens.
Okay.
Because he believes that any aliens that would come here would be hostile, and they would try to take over the Earth.
I could see that happening.
So we shouldn't be sending these random... apparently, we send transmissions into space.
We've been doing it for a very long time.
For a long time in order to try to make contact with some species.
But it sounds like we're very primitive at that point. So I can understand where that comes from, because here we're sending these space signals in saying, hey, come and visit us. And when they get down here, well, you guys just discovered nuclear power. You really haven't got space flight down. Oh, you're very primitive, right? All right, we'll just take over your planet.
Right.
There you go. That's the way I'd look at it.
Yeah, I read this book a really long time ago. I don't even remember what it was about, but it had a very interesting concept in it. And it was one of those, kind of like there's interplanet, like there's lots of planets, like in Star Trek, basically. You know how there's like lots of different planets, and they don't mess with primitive planets, etc.
The Prime Directive.
So this guy, though, was I think I'm actually going to remember the title of the book, and I read it when I was like 11. I believe it's called A Stainless Steel Rat is Born. I believe that's what it's called. Anyway, this guy was trying to become a criminal.
Yeah, you're right. The Stainless Steel Rat series.
Oh, you read that?
No, I know of it.
Okay. Well, it's amazing that I read one book. Mm-hmm. I read one book, people. This brain of mine can recall these...
Education pays off, people. Stay in school.
Can recall these completely useless information, yet sometimes I can't remember the medical stuff that I'm supposed to be knowing. But that's why I use a book and a computer and all that other stuff.
On that note, real quick, before we continue, I had a friend... we went to
You had a friend?
I had a friend. I really did. When my son was little...
one more than I have.
When we were going to... when my son was little, we went to story time.
Is he big now?
No, he's big.
Your son's big now?
Yeah, he's 18.
He's kind of he's larger.
Yeah, he's
larger.
He's larger. He grew up. But we went to story time at a local place, and I got to be friends with one of the doctors that would come in, right? And she was going through her residency being a surgical doctor, right? Just general practitioner, I guess it's called. I don't know the terminology. But she came in, I said, hey, how was your day? She goes, well, we were doing surgery, and I had to break out the book and look where this part was on the body. And I looked over. You're a doctor. You should know that. And she turned around and says, Ron, we don't know everything. We're not gods.
Right.
And I thought, okay, that kind of put things in perspective. Mm-hmm. I know the human body's always evolving and whatever have you out
and
there.
It doesn't look like, on the inside, it doesn't look like what that book looks like either. You know what I mean?
I don't know.
It doesn't have those pretty colors, and there's not little arrows pointing to it that saying this what this is and that's what this is.
It's not a roadmap.
Yeah, and it's not going to be this perfect size and all those other things. Well, honestly, in all my years of being a nurse and being a nurse practitioner, I've only met, I think, that pops into my head, one, I would say... Probably one that pops in my head that I thought was truly a genius. Really? Only one.
That is interesting.
And he was he was an interventional radiologist. So he wasn't even in and I was like, wow, what a waste. I mean, not a waste because he was a great interventional radiologist and we definitely need those. But I was like, this guy knows shit about everything. Two people that have impressed me in my entire life that I thought were really intelligent were this guy and the other guy, and I hope he doesn't listen to this podcast because it's going to make his head swell. But this guy knows shit about everything, and that would be my sensei. That motherfucker knows shit about everything, and it's really fucking aggravating because And, now I kind of hope you fucking listen to this podcast. Let me tell you something.
I know who you're speaking of.
Let me tell you something. He will know something a little bit about everything, and it drives you up a fucking wall. Because if I find something that I'm like, wow, that's really fucking cool, and I'm kind of excited about it, and I just kind of talk to him about it, he's like, oh yeah, if you read this book about that, I'm like, what the fuck? How the fuck do you have time to know all that shit? That really aggravates
Isn't he a
me.
doctor of pathology though?
He has two.
Okay, whereas you got the one.
I got one doctor.
Oh, here, let me make you feel smarter. I don't have any.
Well, as I've often said, it doesn't matter what degree you have anyway. There's plenty of intelligent people that don't have degrees. Unfortunately, and this is the truth, it doesn't matter. You could be smart as fuck, but without that degree, nobody cares. For example, let me say that one of the other people that I've met that I find extremely intelligent is my wife's grandmother. That lady knows shit about everything also. You could ask her something you could ask her random stuff that we should know, but somewhere we don't recall it in our brain anywhere. For example, if you're like, man, how would you tell if a woman was, I'm going to take a weird turn here.
Listen up. This is going to be good.
I'm going to take a weird turn. If a woman is having her menstrual period, okay?
Isn't that the same thing twice? What? Menstrual period? Isn't it just menstrual?
No, because the menstrual cycle is broken into parts.
Okay.
So if you're talking about the cycle, you're talking about what they're from the beginning of menstruation to the start of the next menstruation.
You're the doctor. I'll believe you.
Okay, so there's a menstrual cycle, which encompasses this X amount of days. And that can be anywhere from 21 to 32 days or however many days there are.
Okay.
All right. The beginning of it is the onset of the menstrual period.
This is such an educational podcast.
To the next one. All right. So, for example, I think my wife and I were talking about excessive bleeding during the menstrual period.
Okay.
And we were concerned about that. And if you had someone that was using X amount of pads, how would you calculate out what's excessive? Because someone might think that they're excessively bleeding, but in actuality, they might not be. In other words, it might be in a standard range. And I was like, well, how would you even calculate the volume of how much they're bleeding? And her grandmother was able to tell us, oh, well, if you weighed it, this is how much it would weigh, and this would be the conversion of the blood to the whatever. And you're like, what? And she's like, this is simple math, people. And you're like,
yeah, but not many people would know that.
You're like, uh-huh.
And who weighs any type of sanitary?
But it made sense. But that makes sense if you're talking about volume. If you're talking about how much blood is lost. And this is how we do it. We're like, well, did you saturate this many pads per hour? And then you're like, okay, well, that would be excessive.
Yeah, but that's only relevant in the medical field, as I could see. Every normal day of life.
The amount of stuff that she knows. There's one thing to expose yourself and have things told to you, and be able to recall that information, right? That applied learning. For example, I've had lots of exposure to lots of different topics, but how much of it can I recall? Probably not that much. I tell people all the time, I'm like, I've forgotten more than you'll ever know.
That's a common saying.
Yeah, because it's true, right? How much do we actually retain of stuff that we hear on a first-time basis? Not that much. And, of course, if we're not interested, we're definitely not going to retain that much of it, in my opinion.
There's a science behind that. If you talk to one of the guys at the dojo,
I don't want to.
But I'm not plugging it. I'm trying not to.
But are you a martial artist? Before we get on with this podcast, before we get into it too much, because I just want to clarify before we start talking. Do you participate in any type of martial science or martial arts?
Martial science? That's a new terminology.
That's a new term for you?
Yeah, martial science.
Have you never seen the movie Bloodsport?
I guess I have, but I've never paid much attention to it.
His Shidoshi, as he calls him. Here's recall from a movie. It's the other stuff that's not important. But because I like that movie, I can recall that. Although I can't recall what an ankle brachial index is. Okay. His Shidoshi calls it martial science. He doesn't call it martial arts. And there is a lot of folks out there that will say, why do we call it martial arts? Isn't it not a science?
Yeah, it's how you would approach it. Yeah.
Whatever.
But
But just to clarify, you
Clarify.
are a practitioner of the
I am.
martial arts.
I am. However, there's a guy, back to what you're saying, there's a guy that does non-conflict resolutions in dealing with remembering stuff and how things are transferred in the brain. And he brings it up every time I go and practice with him, which is phenomenal. So
That sounds like he needs a throat punch.
no, he's actually, it's applied when you're learning a new technique or you're trying to remember something. So it's one of those things that, how do you remember it? What's, for me, it's how I connect it, right? And, I'm not talking about the neurons firing and, proteins building in the brain. That's all, to me, that's out there. That really is. But I know it's all interconnected. But to me, it's like, how do I remember that your name is John? Oh, well, I look at you and you're like, you look like a John, right? And then there's $10 on the table. You're like, I'm not a John, I'm a vice cop. Okay. That is once again my poor attempt at humor.
I'm just sitting there.
You're just sitting there dead.
Where is my cricket sound? No, please continue with your thought process while I look for a cricket sound.
Oh no. That's it.
That was it. That was it. What was your point?
At this point, it's mute.
Was it just a plug for being a?
No, it's how to
martial
remember
artist?
things. Like you said, how do I remember things? You can't remember things, 10 minutes ago. However, you can remember 10 things or things 10 years ago.
But again, I think it has a lot to, for me, it has to do with, is it interesting? Because if it's not interesting, then I'm not going to remember it.
Okay, that's valid. That's a valid thought. And when you really think about how you're trying to remember things, oh, there we go. Oh, okay. I see how that
Let's
goes.
keep this big buzzer over here, just to be safe.
But when you're trying to remember things, whether it's interesting or not, how do you make it interesting so you can remember?
Yes.
Like the average snowfall in Michigan, that's not interesting to me. However, I've lived in Maine, right? I lived in Europe for a while. Snowfall is snowfall. All I know is it's there. I don't care about the average. I just know when it's going to snow. That's about it. So I don't care about the average. But I do know that the average snowfall every year is more than I care to remember at times.
Well, I think that for me, it's fun to think about the future and say, this is really what I want to fill my brain with. You know what I mean? If I had the option, if I was rich, and yes, people, I would donate my money to charity, and I would give away a lot of my money. So don't think that I'm just want to be rich for no reason. But if I had all the time in the world, if we want to play with Fantasyland, if I had all the time in the world, the majority of the stuff that I would read was I would take my first part of the day and read about what's going on in the world. But I wouldn't spend too much time. maybe like 20 minutes.
I think that's all that's really needed to
I'd read
absorb
that.
what's going on around the world.
And because there's so many varying news sources, I'm like, well, let me pick a news source that I would appreciate. And again, you're only going to get their take on things. So if you don't like Trump, maybe you don't listen to this network, or if you do like Trump, maybe you listen to this network or whatever. Just as Trump as an example. So if I said, well, if I had all the time in the world, that's what I would do. And if I had the money, the first part of that day or the first part of it when I first get to read would be the news. Okay. All right. I filled my brain with being a responsible adult in the United States, and I'm going to read this. But then I'd probably just read comics for the rest of the day. Honestly.
Well, today's comics on that note are almost like a parody, right, of what's going on in society.
Well, you can go throughout the decades and be like, oh, what was going on our podcast that Micah and I did? I kind of said that. I said we should really look and see what was going on when Injustice came out. What was going on politically at that time? Because I think that the comics are, first of all, I don't think comic book writers get very much credit. I think they're great writers.
I agree with that. I really do.
So I'm like, what was going on at that time that maybe reflected what was going on in the world?
Let's take that back a bit, because when I listen to your podcast, by the way, my goal, did I beat Micah out as far as listeners go yet?
Yes.
I did.
Yeah. I mean, I can pull the stats up, but continue your thought. I'll share your stats.
So the
You didn't beat his Yoda podcast though. Nobody's beat that except for Tremonde.
Oh man.
But his is still his is the second highest plays. Tremonde's is the first, but Micah's is the one that went the fastest with the amount of plays.
Okay. My goal is to beat those two.
We got to step up your game and come up with some better key phrases. Then we got to come up with better keywords if you want to be, because that is how you do it, is keywords.
I can do that.
Key phrases.
I can do that.
For example, one of my favorite podcasts, and my favorite podcast title. I think this is by far my favorite podcast title that I came up with. Because sometimes it seems like I put a lot of thought into it. Sometimes I just kind of whatever. My favorite podcast title is "Should I Bleach My Butthole?" Now that one only has 30 plays on the SoundCloud app. Now I don't know how many it has on Apple or whatever, but it only has 30. But I think that's a great title.
Should I bleach my butthole?
Should I bleach my butthole?
Well, that is interesting.
And then the two of the podcasts that I did with the Ricker, or we both actually did kind of a lot of research, and it was a project that we were really passionate about. It's a topic we're really passionate about. It was about Kurt Cobain and Nirvana, and then it was about the death of Kurt Cobain. But both of those didn't really get that many plays.
So that was shot down then.
Yeah. So your last one, let's see, the last one that you did with me.
Could you hit that cricket button, by the way?
Oh, I can hit the cricket button.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. Because you don't care about what I'm saying?
No, I care. But you didn't get the Nirvana joke.
What did you say?
See? Play the cricket button again, please. There we go. I said it was shot down. Kurt Cobain. Uh-huh. Shotgun blast. Uh-huh. I got to make this connection for you, or you're just playing dumb.
If you were going to say shot down, I thought you were talking about like Bon Jovi. I'm like, what does that have to do with Bon Jovi?
No, it was just my poor attempt at humor again.
You're funny when you don't try. Just that's more accurate. You're way more funny when you don't try.
So what you're going to say is I'm more organic.
Did you know Ron is a martial artist? That episode got 33 plays.
Okay, I'm happy about that.
The one before that we kind of talked about Iran and we just kind of babbled on a little bit. That one got 48.
Wow, that's cool.
And I think that it doesn't matter. That's why I was really surprised that the one that the Ricker and I did about Nirvana and Kurt Cobain didn't get that many plays. And we were really passionate about that one. What we did with that one, and I'm not spoiling anything because I think a lot of podcasters do this, and we talk about banking podcasts. I know Mark Maron does that because he does 2 podcasts a week, if you can imagine that, with famous people. That's pretty crazy.
And I know that's one of my goals for this podcast, to get more,
2 a week?
No, more people, more famous people.
Like 2 a week. I could do 2 a week if that was my job, but not if it's not my job. Famous people. I like just regular people. Why do they got to be famous? What is your obsession with having famous people on the podcast?
Are you kidding me? Really?
Yeah.
It would be so fantastic to meet some of my idols, right? Growing up. Right. Weird Al has always been one of those guys that I've always wanted to go. Now, everybody's asked him the same questions, but I would like him to go off and just randomly talk about what he would like to.
Yes.
Right?
You make a good point.
And I think that's you like to draw the story out of somebody. And I agree with that. That's a great organic way of doing things.
Who wants to hear us?
Right?
Who wants to hear us babble on about our bullshit? If you're going to interview somebody, just interject a little bit here and there, but you don't need to talk about yourself.
I agree. However, you got to keep that story going, as you said, And I would like to, I don't know, I really hadn't got that much thought. I mean, growing up, all my heroes are passing on. So who would I like to get on the podcast other than Weird Al?
Zach Braff,
Dr. Demento.
Who's Dr. Demento?
Who is Dr. Demento?
That's what I said.
Oh my God, you're going to piss off a lot of angry nerds now. Dr. Demento was this. Are you bullshitting me here?
No, I know the name, but is that an actual person?
It is an actual person. Okay. Dr. Demento had this radio broadcast out in California, where Weird Al got his start. This guy was doing parody of songs before it got big. And his topics were just crazy. Poisoning pigeons in the park was one of the songs, if I remember correctly. What is it? Napoleon the 13th? Do you remember that song? right? They're coming to take me away.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That song actually got banned, I think, from the radio. Now, when I say I think, that's my opinion. I'm not sure on the facts, so let me state that.
So he's like a Monty Python-ish type guy.
Yeah, and he
Kind of
shows
like
up always when I don't know his real name. I've forgotten it, right? But he always shows up in almost like a tuxedo and a top hat, right? And when you watch UHF, which is one of my favorite movies, he's actually in that movie, right? He's in the gallery. So, Dr. Demento, Weird Al, right? Jack Black, who I think is a great musician, right? Along with
not only is he a good musician, I like him just as a person. I bet he's the coolest person in the world. Did you know he has a YouTube channel where he basically sits there and plays video games?
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
I've never seen it. I just saw that. I was like, wow, what's Jack Black up to nowadays? And apparently a lot of people love it. And I looked at it. I looked really blank because they just showed like a picture, like a still, and he's like sitting in a chair, like a recliner, and he's got like a full beard, and like, he was wearing glasses. He looked totally nerded out, you know, his little belly sticking out and stuff. I was like, man, that's killer. He's just.
And I would love to have the guys
Absolutely.
with Tenacious D come on. Right? That's Jack Black and the other guy. The other guy.
Jack Black and the other guy who's bald.
Yeah. But when they get together, they don't stay on script. Like us, we don't stay on script. We came in
Why don't I
before
make a
that.
script? I made a script once.
Well,
One time I
you
made
know
a
what I mean.
script.
We
It
have
was
a
an
to-
outline.
We have a topic. We have an outline, as you'll say. They're like, okay, that's great. And we get in here, and it's like, it's not there, right?
Mm-hmm.
It goes. And I like that. Who else would I love to see on this, right? I had it on the tip of my brain. The guys from ERB who come in with their creative processing, right? Once again, you get these creative geniuses out there and you just let them go off on the mic, right? And that's the kind of guests I would love to see coming in. Famous, right? Okay, maybe they're not as big as Weird Al and Jack Black, but to me, they're icons.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. From our standpoint, the important thing is that you want to be able to give them a platform where this moment that you've captured in time gets to be shared with everybody. And if you've got 10 followers, it doesn't matter how good your podcast is if no one's listening.
Well, it really wouldn't matter about that either, right? It's like if we had Kevin Smith here.
Oh, so you're saying it's just selfish on our part. We're like, we just really want to talk to this guy. Who gives
Yeah,
a fuck?
why
We get-
not? I mean, that's really what a
I'm cool
podcast
with
is
that
about.
too. But if they're like, well, we don't, how many followers is this guy? Because that's what's going to determine who sees you. You know what I mean?
You take back to Jack Black, right, and Kevin Smith, right? These guys started out small, right? Weird Al started out small, and now they're mega icons. But I think in every interview I've ever seen that there is this humbleness that they go back to their roots. They come up and they talk to their fans. They get autographs. As long as the fan's not too overly aggressive, they come back. And if you say, hey, listen, I'm doing a podcast. Can I get you on just for 10 minutes? And just think about that. 10 minutes alone with Kevin Smith on your podcast, and you could ask him or you could have him talk about anything he would like. And you get him to plug his own stuff. And you're like, wow, I just got to talk to Kevin Smith, right? Jack Black, Weird Al, whoever, Dr. Demento, right? And that to me is much, much more better than trying to set a script up. You're saying, talk about what you want to talk about. Like Kevin Smith directed a couple of the...
Supergirl, probably.
No, he directed, I want to say... Crisis on Infinite Earth crossover series, right, for CW, right? And just to talk about him directing comic book icons and movies like that, think about what he could tell you, right? And you're a big Batman thing, so that connection is there. And you could be just totally geeked out by that, right? Weird Al for me would be, man, I love your music. I love the thought process behind it. But let's talk about your architecture degree. Tell me about that. I was like, wow. Tell me about that. And Dr. Demento, right? What do you think about the future of radio? And of course, he's been asked that a couple of 100 million times. But what do you think about some of the vinyl making resurgence? Asking an off-the-wall topic question, but something related. And to me, That's awesome. Just
Or
getting
like,
back in.
what do you consider the least intimate part of the human body?
Yeah, why not? And that's where Paper Doc would come in.
Yeah, Paper Doc. What do you consider the least intimate? Let's go external.
Oh, okay.
External.
I
What
like
can you
that.
see? No, I'm not saying the spleen. What do you consider to be the least intimate part of the human body? Please tell us, Paper Doc. Oh, that's honestly, I really only look at someone's tits and ass, and their face. And I mean, even their face is optional. I mean, if they got a rockin' caboose and a really nice, if they're really looking good up top. I mean, if you can, I mean, you just lower the lights a little bit. I mean, you know how when you go to the strip bar and they've got the lights lowered, so you really can't see the cellulite and all that other good stuff. I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying. So I don't know about the least intimate parts of the human bodies because I really only look at a couple of them.
Would you say that
Counterpoint then Ron.
Well, would you say those intimate parts are enlarged in the toga?
Clearly his are.
Ah, well, we'll leave it at that then.
Versions of it.
By the way,
His
today's
actually might
password,
be-
if you're listening, is blowies. Blowies.
It's always a good one. And we mentioned this earlier, and we probably should mention it again, that we are going to rebrand the podcast. We're almost there. We are almost there. I don't want to say the name of the podcast yet because I'm still scared somebody's going to steal it. But that's the plan, is that Ron and I are going to brainstorm some additional things, and then we're going to attempt to build a website, and then we will relaunch the podcast under the new name, and you'll still be available to you on anywhere that you listen to podcasts, whether it's on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, SoundCloud.
Actually,
We're on Podchaser somehow.
Actually,
and
you
all the
can
other
just
ones.
listen to it off the web. I've got an old phone that I use. I Bluetooth the headsets in, and I punch it up in Google, and it tells me, do you want to play it? And boom, I listen to you while I'm doing the dishes. And
It's a good doing the dishes podcast.
it is. Unfortunately, I burnt half my dinner one day, just a couple of days ago.
By
I was
washing dishes.
No, I was downstairs folding laundry, and I was actually making dinner for my lovely, lovely wife and my son. And as I'm folding laundry down and I'm listening, I'm really getting into your podcast. I'm like, that's odd. Something's burning. Oh, shit. And I run upstairs and I burn half my dinner, or their dinner. And I'm like, okay. But I was listening to it off the web through headsets, of course. So
Okay.
you can listen to it if you have an internet connection and a web browser.
All right. Well, for those of you who don't understand technology, because you wouldn't be listening to this anyways, and you wouldn't be hearing what we're saying if you weren't already listening.
Ooh, that's a paradox. I like that.
And that's a good. Obviously, you know how to listen to us because you're listening. So, for those of you who don't know how to listen, this doesn't apply to you because you're already not listening.
Oh, wow. That is...
Did I just blow your mind?
No, you know what you just did? Today's password, Ranger Mindfuck.
Ranger Mindfuck. That's the passcode. Exactly. All right, where were we? What were we talking
Well,
about?
we were talking about the times and how the comic books reflected at the times, going back to you and Micah's thing. And I wanted to point out that...
So are you jealous of Micah? Is that what you're saying?
No,
Because of the
no.
whole Yoda, the Baby Yoda podcast?
No,
Is
not
that
at
what
all.
the
But
deal is?
you've set a precedence that, hey, this is where you're at. Can you do better?
Right.
And I can be. I will try, right? I want to do better.
Now, what do you do to promote the podcast?
At this point, nothing until you tell me it's okay to do
At this
it.
point, nothing.
Well, I put it on my Facebook page. I really have. I said, hey, show some love to you and everything. And a lot of people have jumped on board. And that's great. However, with the rebranding, until, I'm not going to put it out there until you say it's okay.
I agree with you. I wouldn't do anything till we rebrand. I definitely wouldn't worry about any type of push for rebranding. And now I'm probably boring the listeners talking about rebranding.
No. But, let's change the subject back to the original question about how the comic books reflected the time. And Captain Marvel, as you stated, it's like, why was he doing all this? It was at the time he had this great name called the Red Cheese, the Big Red Cheese.
The big yellow cheese. The big red cheese.
Yeah, that's what he was called. Because they couldn't swear like, you dumb fuck, Captain of Marvel, or Shazam, or whatever your name is.
Yeah, it's a little bald doctor with the glasses who was telling him that. What was his name?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Question is, was he really a doctor?
I don't think so.
I think he was.
I think anybody who can wear a lab coat and have the lights low and in a strip
He had a
club
whole
can be a
family.
doctor.
He had a whole family that was against the Marvels. He had like the daughter, a son, and whatever, and blah blah blah. And anyway,
But the dialogue reflected the sign of the times and what they were doing, right? You looked at Superman as a Boy Scout in World War II, Shazam, Batman, all the Justice Leagues. In fact, as we discussed outside the studio, Wonder Woman and how her costume and her lasso related to a certain area of submissiveness in that society of women. Now we flash forward, the dialogue's gotten a lot more adult humorous, more adult orientated. Comic books aren't for kids anymore. But also Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and a few other writers, I think Marv Wolfman too, right, came up with the concept of bringing social injustice into the limelight through comic books. You look at X-Men, it's the first interracial team, right? And that was the one thing they broke out of the norm. And their dialogue was spread out over pages. It wasn't crash, boom, bang every page.
some of it gets lame though, don't you think?
In
you
ways
like,
you can.
So what was it when I think that was it Speedy was the first one to have a drug problem?
Yeah, heroin, I
Like,
think.
and they're trying to do when they do that stuff. You're like, this isn't an after school special. This is the comics. Do I really care about that? Honestly, and like when there's a period of time, and for somehow we're morphing this into a comic book talk. Do I really care about how campy they get? For example, you remember the what's the comic series when that whole series when Bane breaks Batman's back and
Nightfall.
John Paul Valley takes over as to be the Batman for a while.
the Nightfall
what's
series,
right?
yeah, I think.
There's stuff in that where it's a little emotional, and I think is it Tim who's Robin at the time?
I'm not sure, but
I think
I'll agree. Yeah.
Tim is Robin at the time. And he's trying to tell John Paul Valley that he's like, oh, dude, you're not being Batman. Like, you're kind of being not cool. You know,
Okay.
I'm okay with that. But if you remember after Jason Todd died, when he discovers who Batman is through his own little investigating, which is really funny. Tim figures out who Batman is, but nobody else can figure out who Batman is.
No, I agree with that.
Bane knew right away. Bane's like, oh, that's Bruce Wayne. If you remember, they're like Bane. He's like Batman is Bruce Wayne. But Tim wanted to become Robin, but there's like this emotional dialogue in the comic about how he's like, oh, I'm there for you, Bruce, and I'm trying to fill that void. And blah,
Well,
blah,
I
blah.
think people want to see that too. They want
Fuck that.
Yeah, that was the selling point of Marvel.
That's like you use that particular comic to get your mom on board for you to read comics. Look, Mom, it's an emotional comic.
Well, it's not an emotional comic per se. I understand that it's an emotional comic for you, but most people would sit there and read the intellectual part of it.
Do we want Batman to be emotional though?
In a sense, it humanizes the character.
It's kind of like the Lego movie, right? Great movie. The Lego Batman movie. Awesome movie.
Okay.
Was it Will Arnett?
Will
is
Arnett, yeah,
Batman's
I'm
he's
Batman.
a great Batman voice. But his character is Batman, but it's more like Dick. Because Dick's always funny. Dick's always making little jokes and little quips and stuff like that. So you're like, yeah, I know that's supposed to be Bruce Wayne, but Bruce Wayne's never funny. He's not going to sit there and go, Pewter! Instead of computer, he's not going to go, Pewter!
Well, you ever watch Robot Chicken?
Yeah.
Batman is, I'm Batman, right? It's like, you should be in the kitchen doing dishes, Catwoman, along with Wonder Woman. Really? Oh,
In
look,
heels.
the bat signal. I have to go.
Yeah, in heels. I would agree with that. I don't know.
It humanizes the character because you can't always be that spot on. I realize that Batman has an emotional disconnection from society, but at some point he connects because why is he the Batman? Because of the murder of his parents.
I know, but do we want a funny Batman? That's my question. I like Lego Batman, but when he was funny, all I could think in my head was, that's more like Dick than Bruce Wayne. And I
have
know
you
it's
seen
supposed
the
to be funny.
70s superheroes Batman?
Yeah, I know. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the TV show. I'm not talking about the campy. That's what I'm saying. When I read the comics, I want certain I think it's bad because I'm just saying this is how I want my character to be. I want Dick to be funny and sarcastic and always banging chicks because that's what Dick does.
Okay.
And literally, that is what Dick does. Dick bangs chicks. but that's what Nightwing does. Nightwing. How many chicks is Nightwing? That's what I would like. I would like a listener to call in who's done the research and see how many of the superheroes, supervillains, women in general has Dick banged throughout his years.
That could have been that caller that you hung up on.
It could have been throughout his years as Robin / Nightwing. Because he's been Nightwing since like the 70s, right, or something like that.
I think the early 80s.
Is it the early 80s? Okay. Well, but he had the 70s collar. I think that's why I think it was the 70s. Because you remember his first costume had like that big high collar.
Yeah, he was with the
He kind of looked like his costume
too.
was kind of like Deadman's costume, almost like that gymnast type.
Okay, yeah, I remember the Dead Man.
Yeah. I would like to know how many women, not Dick, Dick Grayson has banged as Nightwing. The count of how many women Dick has banged is be going. That's
I
astronomical.
love it when you stumble over your words trying to clean it up.
I'm not trying to clean it up. I'm just saying.
You were trying to clean up
I'm
that
just saying
dialogue.
if somebody sends me an email about how many women Dick has banged, it's going to say billions. I'm like, yeah, I understand that because.
So you're saying the word Dick
Yes.
versus the character Dick,
I'm
and
saying the word
once
Dick
again, I'm
is
watching you stumble over your
I'm
words.
not stumbling. I'm just making a point that I would like the actual. I would like the actual number of.
For those who can't see, it's awesome to see him stumble.
I'm
but
not
he's
trying,
not stumbling.
I'm not trying to
He's
make
not
the. I'm not
stumbling.
trying to make the podcast clean. I'm just trying to clarify.
Oh, that's
that
the
I
word.
really want some actual numbers on how many women in the comics Dick Grayson has banged.
Hashtag bang.
I mean, I can think of 3 off the top of my head.
Okay, who are they?
He's banged the Huntress,
Okay,
He's
I
banged
don't remember that one, but okay.
Barbara Gordon,
Okay.
and he's banged Starfire.
Well, Starfire, yeah. Because
So there's 3. I know 3 off the top of my head.
Okay, him and Starfire were supposed to get together, but the other two I'm unfamiliar with.
He
But,
dated the
okay.
Huntress off and on. Barbara Gordon's Batgirl,
I know who Barbara Gordon is.
banged
She
her?
also wound up being Oracle.
right? And then she became Batgirl again after Lex Luthor fixed her.
No, see, I only dropped I dropped the comic after that. Like I said earlier, it got way too expensive for me to own comics. I've got a basement.
It's not expensive to own comics.
Oh, it is.
It's expensive to buy comics.
No, it's expensive to own them.
Why are you like taking out storage facilities to put all your comics in?
Have you ever skinned them? It's a term called skin and bones. You know what that is?
No.
Okay.
I know what skin and bones are.
Right. So, yeah. Well, you're a doctor. You should.
I understand.
Where is he going
I
with
understand
this?
what skin and bones are.
So, being a comic at the time, comic collector, you have to buy a backing for it to keep it straight and in bags, right? So, skin and bone, you put that. It's kind of non-acidic paper or a cardboard backing into that, and then you put it in this plastic bag. You kind of tape it up, and it retains out of light its original color, not fading. It's just pristine, right? And then you got to buy the box to put these in. Now you can put them in different boxes, if that, but they made these long cardboard boxes to keep them. And if you go to any comic book shop, you'll see them, right? They've got, you can buy all that crap, and it got really expensive, right? Because I was buying, like, I had at least 20 or 30 comics a month that you were doing that for. So you would read, and then you'd very carefully put them down, then put them in, put the backing, and then put them in a bag, and then tape them up and put them in the box, and then store them. That's, once again, I have some very good collectible comics because I read them and then just did that. So it can be really expensive after a while. So yeah, to answer your question, it does get expensive.
What was my question again?
I
What was my
forgot.
question?
It's like you.
What was my question?
I forgot. Does it get
You
expensive?
said it's expensive to keep them
Yes.
or have them. It's expensive to have them.
Yes, it's expensive to have them. Yeah.
Now, after all these years, then, do you think your comics are worth anything?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially with the movies that are coming out. You think
But
about,
you don't think anybody can get those comics if they just go online and type it in and be like, oh, I want this comic.
Yeah, they can. They can. I'm not disputing that. However, with the death of Stan Lee, if you had an original Stan Lee with his autograph on it.
Well, if you have an original Stan Lee, he's dead. I mean,
Exactly.
If you have the original Stan Lee, then unless he, there was legal documents that said you can have my body, That's one. It's disturbing. You don't need an original Stan Lee.
No, but I have an original comic book from the Secret Wars. In fact, I have the entire Secret Wars set from the initial net. And the one comic I was lacking was the end one with the introduction of the black costume, which of course became Venom. Now, I don't have it when that costume became Venom, but I have the introduction of that. So now Venom comes out. Fanboys love it. A lot of people rushing out to get reprints or try and find the original introduction of Venom, which of course was the introduction of the black costume back in Secret Wars number 12. Boom, it goes up in value. Now, let me state this. It's only valuable to two people, right? One, the collector, and two, the people that owns it. Right, or the person that owns it. So I own it. It's got sentimental reasons. I like it. I love the entire series about that. Boom. It became a collector's item for me. Right. Has it gone up in value? Yes. Sentimental-wise, yes. And as far as a collector on the open market, yeah. Are there better ones out there? Probably. Are there ones that were verified and signed by Stan Lee? I'm pretty sure. But the value of it will go up. It's just a matter of how you keep it then. It's sort of like some of the stuff that we own.
Right. Well, the value of anything is only determined by what someone will actually give you for it.
I agree with that.
I mean, they can list the value of something, but if nobody's going to give you that money for it, what difference does it make?
I agree with that. I really do.
And I think that obviously if it has some minimal value for you anyway, you're not going to get rid of it anyway. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Unless
then,
certain circumstances
dictate where you're like, oh, I have to get rid of it. But I agree with you were saying. There was a point in time, and I think I'm going to start doing this again, but there was a point in time when I was like buying toys and just putting them in a box. And, you know, I don't need to play with toys, but I was buying them in anticipation of
They're called action figures.
Well, I was buying like the smaller ones, like for the preschool kids. Like when Star Wars had the little miniature types, but they're not small, so and they didn't have really moving parts so that little kids could play with them.
Yeah.
I was buying those in anticipation of having grandkids one day, and I was like, hey, I'm going to have these toys for my grandkids, but they can open them right out of the box, and nobody else is going to have these toys because they're from 30 years ago.
Okay.
So I was collecting, but not for any personal, not thinking that they're going to be worth money or anything. I was just doing it to be like, hey, this is something kind of cool that they're going to experience that nobody else is going to experience. Mm-hmm. But again, it's like,
see, I got into that aspect side too, and it got expensive. When you got into collecting action figure dolls,
you just call action figure dolls?
Oh, okay, action figures.
They're dolls. No, they're
dolls.
action figures.
Yeah, it depends on your terminology.
It depends on what it is. They're action figures.
But you had to really do the research because they would reissue certain dolls or action figures repainted, right? And then I think the one that was really one of the rare ones was Fantastic Four came out, and it was Sue Storm, and it was a clear one, right? And that went up. It's also like, what is it, Battlestar Galactica when it came out?
You know what my opinion on the Fantastic Four is?
No, what's that? But Battlestar Galactica came out, they had those, what is it, Cylons could fire those like little projectiles, and some kid choked on them. Tragic as it may be, they revamped their design on it. So if you had an older one, it went up in value.
Kind of like the old Boba Fett, that he could shoot the little rocket off of his back.
Okay, yeah. Also, I was lucky enough that my wife won the entire set. I don't know if we have them still somewhere downstairs. I'm not sure. But she won the entire set of the Gargoyle series. You ever see the cartoon? The animation?
I don't think so.
Awesome series. She won the entire set. But the collectible one was Demona because it was a female character. Once again, you get into the investment side of it, and it gets really expensive. And to me, it's gotten way out of hand. So you start collecting these, what are you going to do with them?
Right.
So hopefully one day that I'll either put them out on display, or if I have grandkids at one point, they'll go to them. But I also have Kiss memorabilia, right, that it just got too expensive to collect. So collect what you like, people, right? And listen to this podcast.
Right. Well, I think I did that to my son, though, right? Because I'm pretty childish, and I like childish things. And, for example, my son has loved Spider-Man forever.
So I'm looking around in your studio here, and I see a Batman, and I see the Star Wars script, right? These are all adult things.
Yeah, they're all adult things. My Darth Vader head. Yeah, and actually, there used to be way more stuff in here, but because we were going to move, all that got packed up. So there was a ton of stuff. There was like action figures and all that other stuff in here, but it's not there anymore.
Okay.
But I think that I kind of screwed my son over a little bit, right? Because he's always like Spider-Man. One of the first, not the first movie he saw, but one of the first movies that he can remember is the Spider-Man with, what's his name? Tobey Maguire, right?
Okay.
And my son has always had, and he has one now to this day, he's always had a Spider-Man costume.
Okay.
From every age. I mean, as soon as he would outgrow one, he'd get a new one. So he's always had a Spider-Man costume.
But your love for comics has inspired him to be creative.
Yeah, but I've also kind of screwed him over a little bit because every time I saw something cool, Spider-Man related, I would usually buy it. And
how's that screwing him over?
Because then that started him into buying it. So, like, for example, pop figures. You know how everybody loves pop figures?
Okay, I've seen them.
He's got a lot of them. Like, you know.
Are they still in the box?
Multiple storage containers full of pop figures. I've bought a lot of them. So when you look back at it and you go, how much money have I spent on that shit, realistically? Probably quite a lot of money. And what's the return on the investment if they sit in a box? But I think that, like you said, is if you were going to put them on display, like let's say you were like, oh, you know what? This is my wall. I'm going to put shelving in this wall, and it's going to be filled with pop figures. That would be kind of cool.
And that's what you should do, right? It shouldn't be an investment. That's the thing. That's my key point here. It shouldn't be an investment. It should be what you like.
Well, for me, it's never an investment because I never look and see, is this going to be worth anything someday? But I know with like the pop figures, my son will look at him and go, I mean, he was done it before. He's like, he takes off. And you're like, where are you going? He's like, I looked and Walmart has this pop figure. I have to go buy it because they only issued so many of them. And he'll go buy it. And then I'm like, oh, you bought that so that you can wait for it to go up in value and then you'll sell it. And he's like, no. And then what do you do with a pop? You can't play with a pop figure. There's nothing to do with it. You just look at it. And I'm like, oh, so you're going to leave it in the box, right? You're not going to take it out of the box. Like, well
once again,
I kind of want to look at it outside of the box.
That's the imagination, though. That's the imagination. If you want to play with it, you can. If not, from a collector's point of view, don't take it out of the box, right? But it really is up to the individual, right?
Right.
One of the things that I really liked is, for me, if you look at, there was a documentary on Pixar Studios, and when you went by one of the offices, this guy had a bookshelf full of action figures, and I figured that's what I want my office to be one day. Is when I walk in, I want to see my toys up there,
right?
And
you want to see little Ron action figures.
Well, not the vibrators that I've seen out there,
right?
But I want.
That's not what you want.
No,
you don't want the double dong.
No, I don't want the
or what they call the double Ron. You don't want that.
No, I don't want that at all. But I would like to, the Gargoyles, right? Series, right?
Wow.
Some of the boxes got destroyed, so I know that outside of the package, they're not so worth much. But you know what? It's not about that. I'd like to put the entire series up there and just have them in action figure poses.
Yeah, that's cool.
Right? And then,
but you know what's a pain in the ass about that, though?
What's that?
Is that you do have to take them down, dust them off, clean the area that they're on, and then put them back.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Which is kind of annoying.
But then you get to play with them.
I guess.
Right?
Sure.
It's like, oh, Mr. Dust Bunny attacked you. Oh, well, I'll save you. Right? Oh, no, it's Mr. Feather Duster that came from Mom's closet. What's it doing in Mom's closet? I don't know.
Closet?
Right?
What's it doing in Mom's closet?
It's like,
what's this maid costume?
Yeah.
Why are you in your mother's closet? Stop snooping around. You won't see things that you don't want to see.
Why is there a Wonder Woman costume and restraining? Oh, that's rope. But, you want to put them out there.
Why is there a GIMP costume in here?
A GIMP costume?
Why do I know what a GIMP costume is?
I would like to know that.
My parents never should have let me watch Pulp Fiction.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
I was too young. I shouldn't have seen that movie.
Exactly. That Family Guy has a GIMP costume in it, too.
Oh, when they're talking about how to raise their kids, then we're like, oh, you just got to raise your kids right, Lois, and you got to teach them everything.
No, it's when
they're getting like, she's getting
no. I remember
she's getting
that
all
scene.
bondaged up. And
the safety word is banana. So, ironically, I eat a lot of bananas.
Did you say anal? Ironically,
no.
I thought you said anal ironic.
No, I said, I know where your mind's going today, so, I'm just on board for the ride. But
so you're
there's
on
a
board
point.
for the ride. That's also a disgusting thing to say.
It is.
Comments, Paper Doc. The doc only swings one way, people. You know what I'm saying? I do not believe in the bad threesome. Let me ask you this question, Ron.
Of course.
What is your definition? Do you know what the bad threesome is?
I don't know what a bad threesome is, but let me clarify something. A swing actually goes both ways. If it went one way, it wouldn't be a swing.
I'm just telling you, the Paper Doc only swings one way.
Well, doesn't it
What
swing?
do you think a bad threesome? What is your definition of a bad threesome? See, the Paper Doc says there's a good threesome and there's a bad threesome. And I know for a fact, because I know how the Beaveman thinks, that he also feels that there's a good threesome and a bad threesome. Now, let me also clarify.
All right.
That the real Doc is probably okay with either one. You know what I'm saying? Wink,
All right.
wink.
I understand that. So it's a bad
Wink, wink.
threesome.
Well, if you're listening to this. You know what? And I'm not even saying you're the real Doc. Paper Doc is my title. You may be Doc, but I'm Paper Doc, and so therefore I am the original. So fuck you.
So is a bad threesome tissue, Lubriderm, some sort of lotion, and a porno? I have no idea.
Beaveman, please enlighten this poor troubled soul. A bad threesome, according to Paper Doc and I, is 2 guys, 1 girl. That's the bad threesome.
Okay.
The good threesome is 2 girls, 1 guy.
Is there a cup involved?
No, there's no cup, and we're not that. You have to go way back in history for the very early ages of the internet to get to the cup. And you know what? Here's a funny story about that. So the whole point of this topic that I got off on in the first place was talking about what my type of humor is. The reason why I was telling you that is I find it interesting that my son's humor is not like mine. For example, there's times when I am talking about stuff that I think is funny, and he's like, "That's not my type of humor. That's not funny."
Well, when we have our brain session, we can talk about the types of humor. To me, there's several types. Intellectual humor, where you can listen and you get the joke, and
because you laugh like this.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
and then
Martha, that is so funny, Martha. Oh,
like we were discussing earlier.
Listen to what this charming individual was talking about.
Like we were discussing earlier, right? there's clean humor. There's the
right, Jim Gaffigan, clean humor,
and
Eddie
Gabriel,
Murphy, not so clean.
Iglesias, Eddie Murphy, right? Richard Pryor, right? When you go back to the intellectual humor, you think of George Carlin, right? Because he was really good on the intellectual level. He made you think about that.
But you still couldn't have a kid listen to George Carlin.
Some of his earlier stuff you could. Some of his later stuff is a no-go. But it was hilarious to listen to all these guys. And some of the jokes went over your head until you actually thought about them. And then you got it later where you're laughing hysterically. Or you got it right away. Eddie Murphy, I loved his stuff. It was great. It was Raw at the time. I think that was the title.
One of them was called Raw.
And it was great
Delirious.
because that's the humor I grew up with, right? Robin Williams, when he first came out, was just like that. But you go back to the intellectual humor. George Carlin made you think. Actually, Richard Pryor made you think.
Right.
Then you go to the clean humor, and you look at Jim Gaffigan, Gabriel Iglesias, and a few others that come to mind. Those guys were, okay, let's talk about family life and how that relates. Oh, yeah.
Do you think it's harder for them to appeal to an audience?
As a comedian, yeah.
What do you think? Because this is how my thought process works. My thought process is like this, right? I like both types of comedy. So I am open to all of it. So I'm open to all comedy. But because I think that because they categorize themselves in this way, or they're trying to look at the appeal that they have, it's probably harder for them.
When you look at certain comedians like Christopher Titus and Sam Kinison, if you've never heard of those names, please look them up. They're hilarious. Sam Kinison, when he first came out, couldn't find his niche, did the scream after a bad breakup, and everybody who's ever been in a relationship got that. And he went on that. And he was just over-the-top psychopath funny. And then you go into Christopher Titus, who came
Like
out.
cocaine kind of helps a little bit with that too, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. And his background. Now, some of the backgrounds out there form the comedian's outlook. And when you look at Christopher Titus and you knew about his background, here was a guy who just was a heroin addict. I think he was a drug addict, and I could be wrong about that. I don't want to throw shade at him. But he used that humor to come around and just throw it into perspective. And it was just so funny the way he related to his dad and the way he related to life. Then you got Robin Williams, who grew up as a single kid, never having that many friends, always being creative. And that was great. Then you got Gabriel Iglesias the same way. Right? They formed their background, but he kept it clean. And he was selling out shows. So is it hard to stay clean humor? Yeah. But can you make it work? Yeah.
Right.
I mean, anybody can tell a crude joke. Anybody. It's how you make it happen and how you deliver it. And one of my goals, bucket list, by the way, is to do an open mic. Uh-huh. And thank you for allowing me
2 minutes or 3 minutes?
I don't know. I
Isn't
really
that
don't know.
So your original one is like, they say it's like 2 minutes. Oh, you got 2 minutes.
Yeah. And this podcast actually allows me to really kind of express myself on that. Uh-huh. Right? So, I come in with a set topic. By the way, in case you're listening too far into this, today's topic was going to be Gray Man. I did the research on it. I thought it was great. My lovely wife out there, she goes, "What's the Gray Man?" I said, "You got to look it up." She goes, "Oh, the album? No. The book? No." I said, "Type in the Gray Man theory." And she did that. It's like, "Oh, that's interesting." Uh-huh. That is interesting.
That is a good topic.
Yeah. And
we should really get to that.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, we're almost out of time.
I'm pretty sure that we're not going to get to that topic. We'll have to do that next time.
But the thing is, it's how you deliver it. And is it hard to deliver it? Yeah. And do I want to try it? Yeah, I do. Do I get booed? Am I nervous? Am I going to get booed off stage? Yeah, but you got to, that's where you're going to learn.
So if you were, did you know that that's actually one of my bucket list items also?
No, I did not.
I only have two, really. I mean, two ones that I've always wanted to do my whole life. No, neither of which do I think will ever happen.
What are they?
One is to do a stand-up set, and the other one is to play a gig. Right? I'm not a good guitar player, so that's never going to happen. not even at somebody's garage party.
But you can do what Weird Al did. Once again, going back to having him as a guest, there's a video of him where he comes out and he says, okay, he plays the accordion for one of the bands. What is it? They just redid It Rains Down in Africa.
Oh, Weezer?
Yeah, I think that was that. However, he goes, I've been learning this song. I've been practicing it. Someone hooks him up with a guitar rig and everything. And he comes out and they go to him and he plays just one string. Bong. Uh-huh. And that was it.
Right.
And I thought, that's awesome. Not only did he play a gig, he did the guitar, and he's a comedian.
Right.
I mean, the trifecta. So let's get you there.
Right.
Play one note.
I said that. For the few people that listened to the podcast with the Ricker about Nirvana, I said that. I'm like, do you know that song, Smells Like Teen Spirit?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a part where it's like, dun, dun, on the strings.
Okay.
I played that. I'm like, that's all I need. If I could play with Nirvana, they just point to me, and I play those two strings. That's all. That's it. That's all that would have to be done.
What was it on the Gong Show? There was a comedian that come out.
Most people are not going to know what the Gong Show
is.
I know. That was a great show, though.
It was. But he would come out, and the band would be playing, and he's singing the song, I'm going to play my trumpet or whatever right now. I'm going to play it right now. But he never plays it. Uh-huh. Right? He's just holding it, pumping it, or whatever, and that was it. And
have you heard the Larry the Cable Guy one where he brings his guitar out? And he's like, I'm going to play you this song. And he starts playing the song. And he says, by the way. And then he starts telling a joke. And the crowd is dying. And he's like, and I'm going to play this song for you right now. And he starts playing it again. And he's like, and then he starts telling another joke. It's fucking hilarious. But it goes all along. But he finally does play the song. But it takes forever. And he just has the crowd the whole time. They're just like laughing their ass off every time he does it. Very funny. Did you know he actually doesn't have that thick of an accent?
He doesn't.
He does not. Yeah. But he's a very good character actor.
He is.
Anyway. But we digress. We're talking about comedians.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know what the fuck we even talked about, honestly.
But, your bucket list was phenomenal. My bucket list was to be
Yeah, to only have 2 things on it.
yeah 2 things. Actually,
But my bucket will never be filled because here I am, almost 47 years old.
no, I never looked at it like that. One of my bucket lists, right, at the time when I was growing up, is the one thing is I wanted to get a black belt. I really did, honestly, from an early age.
Just to clarify,
Ron's a martial artist, right? And
Ron is a martial artist. In case no one knew, in case you're just tuning in right now and you didn't tune in 40 minutes ago when we were talking about it, or the last however many podcasts Ron has been on, where he mentions it every fucking podcast. Please continue with your bucket list.
Today's password,
Ron.
Black belt. So the one thing I really wanted to do was get a black belt. I did that. Not once, but twice, so I'm very happy. And the other thing was to
Now, how many belts do you need to hold up your pants?
It depends on how much I've eaten that day.
All right.
The other thing was to learn how to scuba dive, right? And I had an opportunity up in Maine.
That one's a little bit easier than getting your black belt.
You know, I knew the instructor up in Maine, but I was getting out of the military at that time, so I couldn't continue that. So I wanted to learn how to scuba dive, right? I'm glad I didn't at this point, but eventually I want to learn because, once again, all my hobbies start out cheap. They get really fucking expensive. Mm-hmm. The other thing is to skydive, right? Now, I'm only going to do that once if it goes bad.
Well, true.
Right? And if it goes great, I'll do it again. But once again, it's the funding behind it because when you look into it, it's more expensive.
It's an expensive hobby to do regularly.
And the other
My favorite hobby is really expensive.
What's that?
Shooting. You know.
Oh, I thought you like filming porno.
No, that's not that expensive. It's all digital.
Oh, okay. So yeah, shooting can be rather expensive.
The editing process is probably pretty expensive. I don't know. I don't edit.
And why should you?
And why should I? If there's people who do that, I've got the creative eye. I've got the eye for it.
And all you need is a narrative over it.
Directing.
I mean, pornos used to be so simple where there was a narrative to it. Now there's not a narrative. It's like, oh, it's the pizza guy. Yes. Would you like a pepperoni? Like, yes, I would. So as I remember hearing about.
Right.
I'm a good guy.
You personally, you're like, I remember it's a standard joke. They're like, I didn't order pizza, and the guy's like, I know. No, but that's what you've heard because you don't watch.
You know, from what I've heard, you've got that low octave voice where you've been the pizza guy. I know.
Yeah, I would like to be the pizza guy, but I've never had that happen. No, well, I don't remember what you were saying.
Yeah, shooting is expensive. For me, always start out inexpensive. Mm-hmm. And they like geocaching for me. It started out inexpensive using an old cell phone, but now it's like you got to have, you can still do it rather inexpensive. But, you got to have a smartphone. Back then, I just used a cell phone with a compass, and I wrote down the chords. And once I got to that area, or you can do orienteering on a map. Mm-hmm. Now, paper maps have gone away too.
Right.
So, there. So that hobby started out low, still relatively inexpensive in my opinion. But for someone who's starting out, they got to go out and get this greatest GPS. It's $200-$300, right? They got to get I always carry around a pen anyway, but you got to get a pen and a flashlight in case you're night caching, right? It can be rather expensive at some point. I usually, when I geocache when my son was younger and his friend, who I call my other son, I would bring a day pack with me of snacks, water bottles,
right? Yeah,
toys to swap in and out. It got expensive and got heavy. Now, if I geocache, it's just with a smartphone and my pen. I still occasionally take my backpack.
It doesn't sound as fun. Compass would be way more fun. Compass and a map would be a heck of a lot more fun.
That's orienteering, but if you think about with the kids and you want to get them involved, you give them a smartphone.
Nah.
Right. Once again, when I was reading comics, an expensive hobby just blew up into an expensive hobby. Mm-hmm. So all my bucket list stuff, while great on paper or digital, start out inexpensive. It's going behind the scenes that you're going to see that it gets a lot more expensive. Mm-hmm. Right. And I was really lucky to, once again, find a place to be a practitioner of martial arts that was inexpensive.
Yes, right? Because you do practice martial arts.
I do, right. And a shout out to the Southside Dojo and the nonprofit that they do. I really do mean that. And I've yet to see anything like that. Right.
It's a unique organization.
It is. And the people there are really cool. They really are. They're really great people.
They're cool. I mean, I don't know if they're cool. But.
By the way, I want to mention something before I forget it. When you walk off the floor, and I'm off the floor, I want to say hi to you and I want to shake your hand and talk to you.
Yeah.
But you ignore the rest of the karate class. You're like, no, I'm too good.
I
will
don't
see
ignore.
you.
No, let me clarify something for you. Let me break it down to you. And I've said this before. Here's the deal, right? When you guys are doing your class, and I do this to you a lot. I do this to a lot of the black belts. If you guys aren't busy, I will bow to you guys as I walk across.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about that.
So
I'm not
I do that
talking about
because
I'm talking about you coming
I
out.
don't have to do that. First of all, I don't have to do that.
No,
But I do it,
I
right?
respect
and
that.
And most of our class doesn't do that.
I respect. No.
I'm like,
I respect that. I really do. Don't get me wrong. In fact, I think it was during your black belt ceremony when you got your black belt during one of our kabuto classes, right? Someone was getting the black belt, and we stopped our class and we bowed to you to show you a respect.
because you motherfuckers should. No, I'm just kidding.
Right?
Just
But I
kidding.
mean, when you come off the floor, like classes, all the classes are done, right? And I'm just, all the parents are hanging out and everything, and everybody's just BSing, right? And I'm like, hey, John, I just listened to the podcast. It was great. No. I'm too good for you outside
No,
the
that's
studio.
not what,
Ron.
that's
And
not
then
what
you
happens.
leave.
That's actually not what happens. Here's what happens, right?
So let's listen to this excuse.
Here's what happens. This is why I don't bother you. You're way more social than I am. I don't want to interrupt what you're doing. You're always actively engaged in talking to somebody or doing something, so I don't want to interrupt what you're doing.
Off the floor.
So
I
it's
don't
not
mind.
that it's not that I'm ignoring you. It's that I'm like, no, they're doing their thing. I'm not going to bother them.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is when we get off the floor, we try to get off the floor before you guys because we don't want to go in the locker room with a bunch of little boys who are sitting there throwing their dogies all over the fucking place, taking up freaking way too much room by putting their dogies on the floor, talking and throwing their socks everywhere because that's what the
That
little
I
boys do.
understand.
So we try to get in there and get out of there as fast as we fucking possibly can. And if you guys beat us, you notice that we all sit there and wait. We all sit there on the couch and wait.
As you should.
Because we're like, we don't want to have to go back in there and kick little kids out of the way so we can change and get the fuck out of the locker room.
Oh, okay, I understand that. But usually it's like, oh, I'm a podcaster. Hello. Yes. Do you listen to my podcast? Oh, no.
I don't even ask people.
photography.
No, I don't ask
no
anybody if that.
autographs,
I don't
no
ask
autographs.
people if it. Because you know what?
Please
As
talk
I've
to
told
Ron,
you
our
before,
PR guy.
As I've told you before, obviously, if people listen to the podcast that we know, that's fine. But that's not the audience that I'm trying to reach. So when I do find out that people actually listen to my podcast, I am gracious that they listen to the podcast.
What is our target audience?
Everybody.
So why wouldn't it be at the dojo?
But it's not, but we don't focus on that.
No, you're right about that.
I'm not interested in being some local podcaster that 10 people locally listen to. When I see that we're in different cities or it pops up that different countries that listen to us, then that's cool.
I understand that,
If
yeah.
I see a statistic that says, oh, you had 2 listeners in Kalamazoo, I'm like, okay, whatever. You had 2 listeners in Battle Creek. I think it's cool that most of the cities that will pop up for us are not Michigan cities.
Real quick, shout out to the Middle Eastern country that did listen to us.
Yeah, that one time. Also, that you bring up a very good point. I have not said this yet, and let me say this. Shout out to Mountain View, California, because you
There we
guys
go.
listen to every podcast we have, and I don't know who it is that's listening, but thank you for listening to pretty much every podcast that I've put out there.
So please leave comments, right?
I mean, you can if they're good ones.
Oh, even bad ones. Leave them
Even
for
bad
me.
ones. Well, even bad ones because then you're like, oh, well, that means somebody's listening.
Yeah.
I agree totally.
And I got to say this: every time that I've been on, my wife will listen, and she will laugh her ass off over something. And I was taking her somewhere, and she got in the car, and I said, "Did you listen to the podcast?" She goes, "Yeah." By the way, blowies, really blowies?
Well, what you should have said to her was, you said it. I didn't say it. Didn't you listen to the podcast? You're the one who said it, not me.
And I just laughed. I'm like, and I said, "What do you think about the dynamic between me and John?" She goes, "It's really great. You guys just feed off each other." And I thought, thank you. So thank you for listening.
Is she required to say that, though, as your wife?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Definitely.
I mean, they are required. I mean,
They are
to
required.
try and be supportive in some way, shape, or form.
I mean, I noticed that when Swan was on, I listened to the podcast, very interesting podcast, but I like how you just browbeat her to death. I was like, no, your opinion is shit. I'm like, oh, okay, I can see where this is going. it's like you didn't even give her a chance to formulate the idea that she may be right or wrong. You just came out of the barrel like, no, this is the way it's going to be. Sort of like the coin toss. I thought that, well, what do you want? I don't know. What do you want? And you're trying to feed her that you have an opinion. I want to listen to it.
Right.
But your opinion is my opinion, so you better pick the right opinion.
Right.
Shout out to the Echo company that you belong to, by the way. That was
Thank
awesome.
you. Yeah, I don't know if any of them listen. They probably don't. But if they did, that's awesome. I don't even know what we talked about this time.
I went off on the tangent.
Topic. We should get to your topic that you want to talk about.
Yeah, you know what?
these days.
For a future podcast, it'll be a gray band theory and how to maneuver in society without being seen.
So that will be our podcast topic for next week. Let's just make that our topic.
Okay.
I will try not to get sidetracked and ask
Honestly,
you other
I don't.
stuff, but
I'm beginning to organically understand what
see,
you
now
mean.
I don't like that word because you use it all the time.
I won't use it again.
No, the point is that, and I've told you this,
Yeah.
we don't really have to do this, you and I, because you're very good at jumping in the topic. But
appreciate
when
it.
other people do it, they get a little nervous. So a lot of times I don't tell them when I start recording.
When I first initially did this, you could tell, right? Because I came out, right? I didn't know what to expect. And I'm sitting here, you put a mic in front of me, and I'm glad it's not shaped like a penis because you showed me a lot of
I
respect
mean, it kind
there.
of is. It's still phallic if you look at it.
But you said, this is what I don't want you to do. This is what I want you to do. Try this out, but try and let it flow naturally. And I'm like, okay. And the more I listened to you, the more it came. And I'm like, oh, okay. And what's the today's topic? Like, I think we've only stayed on topic, my very first podcast, which was Ecclesiastics. And that was it. After that,
Yeah, and what's really interesting is you've never pronounced it correctly.
how do I say it?
It's Ecclesiastes.
Oh, sort of like Ecclesiastes.
Way to fucking do the research.
No, I did the research. I just didn't know the
You just
name.
didn't read the word.
I didn't read the
fucking
word.
That's fine.
Right? It's one of those things where I did the research. I listened to podcasts. I listened to that. And, oh, cool. And then after that, it's like, okay, we're going to do this. I'm like, okay, let's talk about that. And then, boom, it just goes to hell.
Well, I didn't go to hell. The point is this. It's much better, in my opinion, if you start talking about, just in random, in general, start talking about stuff, and then you segue into the topic. I don't think it's fun if we just go, okay, this is what we're going to talk about. Let's start. Boom.
Oh, and I tried several times to segue into the gray man thing, but it's like, you like, so what did you think about this? Well, and it kind of says back to the...
All right, next topic is about the gray man theory.
No.
I will just ask you how you're doing, and then you launch right into it. This is exactly how it's going to be. Like, so, Ron, how's it been going? Great. Let me talk to you about today's topic, and then you can just launch right into it without
honestly,
having any natural conversation whatsoever.
No, you're absolutely...
You can launch right into it,
You're absolutely right.
just like the scripted
You're
podcast.
absolutely right. My God. The thing that pisses me off the most is when someone's making their point. And I interject. I really do, and I should wait until they're done. But I say, you know what? You're right. You're right. That was my error. You're absolutely right. And they spend the next 5 damn minutes trying to make their point across, and I've already agreed with them.
Well, it's
I'm
because
wrong.
the easiest way to frustrate someone, in my opinion, this is what I like to use for arguments with people, is to tell them they're right, even if I don't think that they are.
No, in this case, you're right. I totally agree with you. But, for the last 5 minutes, you're like, and this is why I'm right. And I'll agree with you. Yeah, I see your point of view, right?
Yeah.
I'm not wavering from what I did. I'm wrong. I can admit that. And when you go, well, as long as you know you're wrong, you're right. And this is why
This is
are
my
wrong.
It is my podcast.
Yeah, and it's your podcast.
It is my podcast. No.
And I think going back to your previous podcast with Swan is when you got Nancy Grace. You talked about her, and I agreed with your opinion on that. That she comes out over the top. I tried watching her a couple of times, and all I could do was just get frustrated with the attitude and everything. And she has been wrong. And I think it's on Wikipedia that it mentions it. And you're right, she doesn't issue an apology. It's like, oh, well.
But why should she? I guess. Would it change from one perspective? First of all, I don't think it's okay that she doesn't apologize. I think that she should, because that actually gives you more credibility, right? If you say, in my opinion, as a person that says, if you came out and said, I know this was 5 years ago, and maybe it's not relevant now, but I made this statement and I found out later that I was wrong, and that's it. But it's not going to change it's not going to change that perception that's already in people's heads.
I think from a lawyer's standpoint of view, it's admitting that you're wrong and you're held accountable for it. Therefore, your credibility is going to go down.
See, and that's different I think for us in general as human beings. And then also for like medically, we admit if we were wrong, like if we got the diagnosis wrong, or if we, for example, take an x-ray. You fall, hurt your wrist. I x-ray it. I don't see a fracture anywhere. I don't see a break.
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't see a break anywhere. I'm going to put a splint on you for comfort. I'm going to send this report off to get a double read on it, and we'll go from there. They go home. I get official read back 2 days later, and there was a break, and I didn't see it. Okay, I don't ignore that. We call and we say, and because it's second nature to us to know that things are, like things like that are always going to happen, because it's not. I know people think that medicine is an exact science. In my opinion, it's not. Okay.
Okay.
So you call them like, hey, I got the official report back on the radiology report, and you do have a fracture. I missed it. I didn't see it. But people don't get mad about that.
But you're admitting you're human.
Right.
You're admitting a mistake.
But why can't they do that? I mean, if
in
you
the
look
legal
at,
sense, it also opens them up for a lawsuit, right? But she should know that if you're wrong, admit you're wrong. I don't know. I tried watching her, and I just couldn't get into her, right? But your point,
I think the offer still goes out, though. If she's listening to this podcast and she wants us to shut up about it, I mean, she could just send money our way.
Oh, hush money, as I think it was stated, yeah.
Hush money.
Right? And
I don't think that's illegal if I state it. I don't think. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
You could say you're a sponsored buyer, and then that would feed your comic book. And that way you get more research.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And better equipment, as you said, for up there. And then maybe a bigger tongue depressor for Paper Doc. That would be cool.
He's already got some serious, not self-esteem issues. He has an overinflated ego. So I don't know that I want him to have a bigger tongue depressor.
Oh, that's why you don't say hi to us when you leave?
That's not me. No.
Oh, okay.
I don't have it. I told you I don't want to bother people. You haven't noticed that yet. And I don't like to bother people.
Yeah, you're very quiet.
And I don't like to interact with people because my conversation is good for maybe 30 seconds. That's about it. It's pretty much, hey, how's it going? Great. Hey, good to see you. Okay, bye. That's about it.
What if we put you
behind
behind the podcast at wherever? You seem to be a lot more talkative and a lot more opinionated when you're behind the mic. So if we got you like a portable mic.
Well, how interesting would the podcast be if I was podcasting like I am in real life? There would be an hour and 20 minutes of silence.
For some people, that might be way too much.
Yeah, for everybody, that should be way too much.
I think your podcast is great. And one of the goals is also to do a podcast out in the wild. Right? If you really think about it, this is all portable. You take it out there and you could do it. Right, taking a cue from Kevin Smith. I think that would be great. And eventually it gets so big that people buy you those drinks you want. Mm-hmm. I think that'd be great. And if Kevin Smith is listening, definitely you want him on. Right,
Kevin Smith, if you're listening. But what topic would you talk about with Kevin Smith? In the last 2 minutes of our podcast, what topic would you want to discuss with Kevin Smith?
Oh, everything. His directional.
Narrow it down. Narrow it down to one topic that you could talk to Kevin Smith about. It could be one topic that spans this whole genre, but it's one topic. If I said to you, Ron, Kevin Smith is going to be on. We're going to talk to Kevin Smith. But he said that you and I could pick one topic to talk to him about, and all three of us can talk about the topic, but you get to pick one, and I get to pick one. What topic are you going to ask him about?
What was it like meeting Stan Lee, and how did he influence you as a writer?
That's a good question.
Because he when Stan Lee passed away, I mean it was a blow to him. It really was. It was like a physical punch in the gut to him. And I mean he was in what, Clerks or Mallrats?
He was in Mallrats.
Yeah, Mallrats. So he got to meet his icon, or at least one of them, and then it kind of spiraled in there. Not that he wasn't a fantastic writer,
but he gave him there was a great homage to him in the Captain Marvel movie. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
He was rehearsing his line from Mallrats when he was on the train.
Yeah, and when you watch Kevin Smith talk about that, he almost breaks down and cry.
Yeah.
Right. So my question would be that: what was it like to work with Stan Lee or meet Stan Lee, and how did he influence your writing and the way things you do?
Even I have been minimally influenced by Stan Lee.
Stan Lee?
Stan Lee.
Oh, that's Stan Lee.
Yeah, that's Stan Lee.
I didn't know who Stan Lee is.
Do you know what my minimal influence from Stan Lee is?
What's that?
There's 2 reasons I don't wear a tie.
Okay. And
One
okay.
is I broke my neck, and I don't like to have anything constricting my neck in any way. I
Okay.
don't like to have things around my neck. I don't like anything around my neck. The other reason is because Stan Lee didn't wear a tie.
Yeah.
Stan Lee never wore a tie. Then he has some, I'm not directly quoting him, but basically he said that, that wearing a tie isn't the measure of success or something like that. So
Okay.
I don't need to wear a noose around my neck, which is what a tie is.
But when you watch him in the early 70s,
Got an ascot? Got
No,
an
he didn't wear an
ascot?
ascot. He always had his open chest, and I'm like, it's like
A gold chain, maybe?
Yeah, that kind of creeped me out because I didn't like
Because
the
in the
disco
early
era.
70s, he was still 105 years old.
I didn't like the disco era, but
Yeah, I
no.
wasn't a fan.
That would be one of those things. So, what question would you ask Kevin Smith if you were on our podcast?
I would ask Kevin Smith to tell me more
your
about how
podcast.
he developed the idea for the movie Tusk. I know a little bit about the story, but I'd like him to go into it more because I think it's fascinating. And I think that Tusk is one of those movies that is just so bizarre and off the fucking wall that it's a great movie, but most people haven't seen it and don't know anything about it.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
You should watch it. You should get it legally.
Why wouldn't
You should rent
How
it
would I
with-
get it any other way?
I don't know. But you should rent it legally and watch it. And it just blows your fucking mind how obscure and off the fucking wall it is.
Is it about? Let me see if I get the gist. Is it about a young man being transformed into a walrus?
Yes.
Okay, that was like the movie, and this is the actual title. That's actually the movie's title, and it's about a young man being transformed into a king cobra by a mad scientist.
Right.
Right. So
His inspiration for this movie, and I heard part of it, was that there was an article like a classified ad asking for someone to come to this guy's house and dress as a walrus like once a week. And he had like a walrus costume.
okay.
That was his inspiration for the movie, I believe, if I've got that right. Which is interesting. I just want him to expand on it and talk about it a little bit. Because I think that's really,
That's probably one of the weirdest gimp suits I've ever heard about.
I don't know.
That would be really cool.
Here's what's really funny is Kevin Smith is we're going way over. Kevin Smith is a huge influence on my son. My son really likes Kevin Smith.
Of course.
And so he has like an autographed copy of Tusk, and Kevin Smith has responded like to Skyler's tweets to Kevin Smith in the past and stuff like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, obviously probably not now because he's way more busy than he was then, but my son was in the drama club or what have you at his high school. And so what they did was they would do like mini acts or mini plays. Mm-hmm. And the mini play that he wrote and directed was his adaptation of Tusk for a play.
That's great.
And it was like, I don't know, it was like 5 minutes long, but it was cool. And I was like, you should tell Kevin Smith that you did it and send him the clip because it's hilarious. It's just goofy that you took this movie that nobody knew anything about, you adapted it for, Broadway, if you will, or whatever.
Of course.
It was kind of cool. But I would like to know what his, Kevin Smith's ever on our podcast when we rebrand, because it won't be on Beaveman and the Doc, it'll be on the new podcast.
So Kevin Smith, if you're out there, please contact John Beaveman or
just contact us at Beaveman and the Doc.
yeah, just contact us.
Beaveman and the Doc, yeah.
And yeah,
Ron likes to use my first name. I don't know.
okay, B. I'm sorry.
He hasn't learned. He hasn't learned yet. That's fine.
Well, you don't have a code name.
That's my Beaveman is my fucking code name.
I'm so sorry. Like Swan. I know Swan's real name, and I'm like, okay, I made a point not to mention Swan's real name. All right. But now I understand.
Now you get it. All right.
Now I
Well,
get it.
that's it for Beaveman on the Dock with our co-host, Ron.
Thank you.
To his many fans out there, the Ronulans, who I'm sure are following him very closely,
Thank you. I appreciate
making sure
it.
that he doesn't mention them too often and or talk about things that are personal in nature about them so that everybody knows what they're doing.
Hashtag
Also,
intelligence.
Also, let everyone know out there that Ron is indeed a martial artist. We've got to mention that on every single podcast from now on.
Well, that's great. We'll have to start that out then next time I'm here.
All right. And from me, the Beaveman, adios, mooch fuckos. Yeah, you can say goodbye, Ron.
Oh, goodbye.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Nice
Thank you.
job.
Pika pika.